Would you like to talk, Melissa?
Sure. Willie Jan, Melissa Shagner sa Setalan, Yidishit Koi Kara Atlan, Itini Anak Kayak Sinsiaden. My name is Melissa Shaganoff. I'm Caribou and Fish Eater Clan from Night Dinyana, or Chickland Village, and I'm the Alaska Specialist for the National Museum of the American Indian. And I'm based at the Arctic Study Center, which is in the Anchorage Museum. I work with Dawn and with Monica, and I'm new to sort of learning about the internships and fellowships at NMAI, but they are they do three per year. There's three different times where you can apply for an internship. Fellowships are rolling. They have an artist fellowship, they have a collections fellowship, and like a kind of a community collections fellowship. But they also have, in order to apply for any of these, you have to register on SOLA, which is the Office of Academic Appointments, Smithsonian Office of Academic Appointments. And I got a little bit of a, trial through that because I supported a couple people applying for internships for the summer. Being in Alaska now, though, NMAI really wants to support people who want to stay in Alaska and not necessarily go to DC. So most of the time, these internships and fellowships, you'd have to relocate to DC and work with whatever office that you had applied for. But with the OEPO office, my office, now having a duty station in Anchorage, there's an option for people to stay in Alaska and to work with me on different projects that I'm doing, as well as work in tandem with Dawn as well, because we work very closely. So yeah, I mean, I'm still kind of new to the way it all works, but as we were going through the application with the two interns that applied this year, um, you go through the application, you have to have a letter of interest, right? Which is something that I, helped them, sort of supported them in coming up with like what their learning objectives are. And then we come up with a learning plan for their internship. So, um, the way that I kind of see it and the way I've seen Dawn sort of operate and working with people too is that, that we want to make this experience something that is like tailored to the intern's interests, but then also tailored to what is the future of our museum, that the work that we're doing. Dawn and my work is very community focused, right? So supporting people in, the museum's, side of operations, but then also, how do you make good relationships with communities? How do you provide mutual respect and reciprocity when it's coming to looking at cultural belongings that perhaps people are connected to, right? And how do you create that sort of environment for people? And so, yeah, that's kind of like where I'm at. I can share my screen and show you the SOLA with a bunch of webinars and then information that I got from Krishna NL, who's from our office, and she operates all of that. She wasn't able to come today because she's on DC time, but yeah, I got all this information from her, and I'm happy to pass her contact along in that email as well. So we can.
I think you're frozen. Is okay. It's not just me. Um, I don't know how to. You might have to log off and log back on again, Melissa.
Or Melissa, you can turn off your camera to start with if your bandwidth is low.
Nope.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is.
Here's your screen. We're seeing your screen now.
You can see my screen now. Okay, yeah, it must be low or something. But anyways, yeah, it says my internet's unstable. Weird. Okay. Yeah, so this is the portal, right? So it's Smithsonian for online academic appointments, and so you just create an account, and I'll just go to this one because it kind of shows you a lot of it is drop down menus. And this is sort of the important part, is that when you're going through, you have to make sure that they apply for whatever institution. So whether it's like with Dawn,
It froze again.
Melissa, I
Hmm.
think you're gonna have to just stop screen sharing, sadly.
It's a great screen share though. So if they're applying to work with you, Dawn, it would be the National Museum of Natural History. But if they're applying to work with Melissa, it would be the National Museum of American Indian, right?
Yeah, and there's a few other things I can bring up too.
Okay,
So do you want me to go ahead since
sure. Yeah.
Melissa
Very
dropped?
similar process, I'm sure.
Yeah. So yeah, my name is Dawn Biddison and I work with Melissa here for the Smithsonian. And as she mentioned, our office is at the Anchorage Museum. And so I'll talk about the National Museum of Natural History opportunities because that's the museum that I work for. And there's basically 4 types of opportunities. Melissa was showing you the main platform, but there's also, because it's the federal government, there's lots of confusing directions you can go in. There's also a main website for academic opportunities at the National Museum of Natural History. And that's where you can learn more specifically about what opportunities there are without navigating through that SOLA system first. So it's almost like you should look specifically before you go to that platform, because then you have to navigate back to what you saw that you were interested in. So if you go to that website, it lists a number of different things you can do, and it basically breaks down into 4 categories. There's Smithsonian fellowships. Those are for graduate students, and through there you can have access to any museum or department at the Smithsonian. And then there's Smithsonian internships, and those are for undergraduate students. Same thing. And then there's also the NMNH also has the Summer Institute for Museum Anthropology, and that's another program, and that's for recent graduates or people in a graduate program. And then there's also natural history research experiences. And so for all of these, they do involve stipends and covering travel costs and housing and things like that. So there's definitely a number of things to navigate. And if it's helpful, I know you can't like click on links in a chat box when it's recording, but if it's helpful later on down the line, Melissa and I can combine our notes and then put together kind of a master document of, links and titles of where to go to for different opportunities. There's also, just in generally, there's also a program called Recovering Voices. That's for community research. There's opportunities at the Smithsonian for artist research experiences, but I'll preface that one by saying the funding for that is very limiting, and I've addressed that internally at the Smithsonian. Hopefully that'll change. The funding is quite frankly insufficient to really make it accessible to most people, but hopefully that'll change in the coming years. But these other fellowship internship opportunities, they do provide adequate funding, I think, to really support people for going down to Washington, D.C. On the other hand, when I've worked on Alaska-based projects, I've tried to provide opportunities and find extra funding to have funded, I guess you'd call them internships as well, or fellowships, but and those have been opportunities for people regardless of their education, that they would be able to participate in working with the Smithsonian on a project specifically to get kind of on-the-job training for the kind of work with communities that Melissa and I do, and that a lot of museums do with communities. So there's that also. So if there are people that are interested, it's hard, you can't really know what projects you're going to have and what funding you're going to have ahead of time. But if there are people out there that are interested, they can always contact Melissa and I, and we can kind of keep track of people who contact us. And when projects start to develop, we can find out what the opportunities are that we can add on for people to join us in a kind of training capacity, more like a mentorship capacity. So I'll stop there.
Wonderful. And then Melissa, did you have more you wanted to cover?
Sorry about that. I think my thing was trying to update at the same time because it turned off. It was weird. But I don't think so. I think I was just saying I got cut off when I was saying that you needed to have letters of recommendation. So it's important to, to start soon. And then what we do is we'll come up with a learning plan together, and this is sort of my experience with working with undergrad students and, interns. And so, yeah, but as Dawn said, there's different tiers. And I think that, we all could use more support. And I'm very much in a position where I'm learning too. So happy to sort of direct people into different positions, whether in DC or in Alaska. Um, and again, like Don said, that they are paid internships too. So there's some travel, somewhat of the cost is higher if you're going to DC and needing to relocate. But if you want to stay in Alaska, they're making, they're making exceptions for that to be possible. Now,
That's great. So if someone's really interested in a Smithsonian internship, they should really probably start by reaching out to you or to Dawn because it seems like a kind of a complicated process and you can kind of direct them. Would that help?
I think so. I think because like it's people apply sort of in this sight unseen kind of thing, where you're not really talking with people about what's happening. So, you're learning standard museum practices, right? And then if you're going into collections or conservation, obviously there's like professional sort of development track that you're moving in, right? But in community work, it's much more nuanced, right? It's going to be, working with whatever projects are happening at that time. So I think that it's best to get in touch with us anyway to see if it would be a good fit. And then also, if I mean, support is always needed, right? But what kind of support will be needed for those times, right? Because they're limited times, they're throughout the year, but to make sure that it's in line, because I think in some ways, because of the standardization of the system, people end up getting a little bit lost. Like some people I know have applied several times wanting to work, in Alaska specifically, or work with the Arctic Studies Center, but not doing the right drop down menu, that can be a problem, right? And so making sure you're in contact with people makes it easier process.